We are live.
Yes, 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 I'm starting. Good afternoon, dear colleagues and friends. I'm Dr. Ajay Rote, CEO of Sigma Hospital, and it is my privilege to introduce our mentor and leader, Dr. Unmesh Takarkar sir, as a speaker, as a faculty for this very important topic of GI bleeding. Uh, uh, Dr. Unmesh Takarkar sir, the name itself is synonymous with who is a person who is a surgeon, endoscopist, gastroenterologist, oncosurgeon, entrepreneur, leader, visionary, philanthropist, and researcher. So a surgeon with multifaceted personality, and he has got a fellowship of American College of Gastroenterology. He is a fellow of American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy, fellow of Union of International Cancer Control, fellow of Indian Association of Gastrointestinal Endosurgeons. He is a member of Society of American Gastrointestinal Endoscopic Surgeons. He is a member of American Gastroenterological Association, and he has published more than 50 original research papers. He is also an editor and reviewer of many national and international journals in the field of gastroenterology. He has written articles in surgery, oncology, gastroenterology in various national and international journals. So it is our privilege to have Dr. Takarkar sir to deliver a lecture. So now I invite Dr. Takarkar sir to start his lecture, please. Over to you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good. Good. Hi, good evening, all of you. First of all, thank you very much for Dr. Rote for the kind words. Thank you for the Torrent team to organizing this good webinar on GI bleeding. So we'll directly go to the topic. As you know, the GI bleeding is a very common topic for all of us, and we see many patients day in and day out for GI bleeding in our common practice. Have the slide, please. Yeah. You seeing the slides now?
It is visible now, sir. You can start.
Yeah, slides visible, no?
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay. So GI bleed and a management strategy, we are now dealing with commonly upper GI bleed, which is related to the ulcers and many other factors. And we are not taking the bleed because of esophageal varices and all this, because this is a common topic, and this is a separate topic itself, which will need a lot of discussion. So we'll go to the management strategy of probably upper GI bleed majority of the times, and we will see the upper GI bleed causes. Most of the causes of upper GI bleed are 80% located in the stomach, 2% located in the upper part of the intestine. So most of the causes which are related are gastric erosions, peptic ulcers, malarious tears, cancer, duodenal region, polyps, and varices have contribute almost less than half of the cases, but other half and majority of the cases will be contributed by gastric erosion, peptic ulcers, and all these things. So these are the main common causes of upper GI bleed. As you know that commonly we'll see in our common practice is peptic ulcer is the one of the cause for GI bleed, esophagitis, gastritis, vascular malformation, GAO, malarious tear, duodenal region, hemocystis pancreaticus, hemophilia. All these lesions are rare, but commonly we see the lesions which are associated with peptic ulcer, gastritis. Then commonly we see malarious tear very common because of excessive vomiting. We get the lower esophageal tear, which bleeds profusely, and we have a lot of options to treat that tear. Either we clip it, inject, or we can put in a band also recently. So, and that will be caught in the endoscope, and we will stop the bleeding. Now, as you know, peptic ulcer etiology is many of the factors which are related to peptic ulcer. One is H. pylori infection, very common in Marathwada region. The endoscopy which we are doing, Normally, if you are doing almost 40-50 endoscopies per day, almost 25 to 30 patients in that is having a H. pylori infection. We are doing that rapid urease test also, and test is showing positive on a OPD basis. And this H. pylori infection is very important that we can detect it without a biopsy also, where we have got a narrowband imaging scope where you can see onion peel pattern, then RAC loss, and this type of picture is suggestive of H. pylori infection, so very easy to diagnose. Then patients who are taking NSAID and aspirin, majority of the patients who are on aspirin, clopidogrels, and cardiac patients, they are being treated and they are commonly associated with the ulcers, and majority of them are having peptic ulcer, then duodenal erosions, and we dual and triple antithrombotic therapy. These patients are very common. So malignancy, carcinoma, lymphoma, that is there, but sometimes we get a profuse bleeding from this site also. And rare cause Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, where we get complete ulcers in all of the intestine, but that might be a cause of peptic ulcer etiology, which might, with the precipitation of other causes, might bleed. So bleeding is the most important thing in this type of infections or H. pylori, aspirin, and it can occur anytime. So these are the, when you get a patients of upper GI bleeding, what commonly we do, just imagine the patient is in the casualty, and what we are going to do without having a so thorough, we can say theoretical implications, we have to do a practical management of GI bleed. So what we do is, first of all, when the patient comes, we do a resuscitation. Then we assess the patient that what might be the cause of this bleeding, and then we go for symptomatic treatment or buying some time till we do an endoscopy. And definitive treatment will do either endoscopy and surgery. So surgery is needed in very less number of times. But what you need is symptomatic treatment, and endoscopy is needed in majority of the times. And by doing this, what we have to do is you have to do a prevention of rebleed. That is the most important thing, so that patient should not rebleed, and patient should be fine and should be on a prophylactic treatment for longer duration of time, so that he will not rebleed again. So what various American College of Gastroenterology and other persons and have got various types of score. These are the scores which we are discussing, called as assessment scores. So Glasgow, then AIMS 65, these, and a lot of scores are described to know the severity of the bleeding. So this Glasgow score is assessment for the need of intervention. They have got categories, then low risk cases, high risk cases, they are from 0 to 10. The most important score which is commonly we use is AIMS 65, assessment of mortality. So we have got 5 discrete categories like albumin, INR, mental state, then SBP, blood pressure, and age. The best to predict the mortality is risk outcome score is more than 2 or equal to 2. Then we have got this score which is very useful for taking the outcome. Now these are the AIMS scores criteria. What AIMS is: albumin, INR, mental status, and systolic blood pressure. So this is if albumin is less than 3, INR is more than 1.5, mental status changes is less than 15, systolic blood pressure is less than 90, age is more than 65. Then these people can go to mortality in a very short period of time. So what we should do whenever you get such patients is the use of high dose PPI. PPI use is very much recommended, and esomeprazole, rabeprazole, and this PPIs are very useful for treating this bleeding, and they are very useful to buy the time till we intervene. So patients present with ulcer bleeding, high risk of rebleeding, ulcers that require endoscopic therapy. 3 doses of high dose IV PPI, we suggest using twice a daily PPI. through, and we have to maintain this for at least 2 to 3 weeks times, and sometimes if peptic ulcer we recommend it for years together, so as to prevent the rebleed for the peptic ulcer patient. Now this lot of things are there. I mean, esomeprazole, then rabeprazole, then pantoprazole, and this Omaze in infusion and all. So we got the Nexpro IV. All this use and they have described that continuous infusion 80 milligram followed by 8 milligram. Then some people advise this intermittent 8 hourly, 6 hourly PPI IV push bolus doses. So whatever is seen in this type, continuous versus intermittent PPIs, the outcome is more or less same. So whatever is your choice, that you give a bolus dose first followed by a maintenance infusion, or you can give intermittent PPI, is very useful. So what is required is esomeprazole has got a stable pH for longer duration of time, but omeprazole and rabeprazole has got some fluctuating pH, so that it may vary from time to time, but intermittent as well as continuous infusion, they have got more or less similar results for buying the time. Now, when we do all these things after coming into the casualty, what is the timing of upper endoscopy? How to detect the bleeding source? Then what technique you use for stopping the bleeding, and what techniques are used for rebleeding? So these are the things which you must know when you do upper GI endoscopy or taken the patient for surgery. Now, timing of endoscopy is early endoscopy within 24 hours of presentation is recommended for most of the patients with acute gastrointestinal bleeding, but sometimes upper GI should be generally undergo endoscopy, but sometimes a semi-urgent endoscopy may require, which may take around say 12 hours of time, and some high-risk patients which are described in Ames criteria or Glasgow criteria, whatever criteria you use, then high-risk patients within 12 hours are most important to take these patients for upper GI endoscopy. Then following ESG guidelines are described for endoscopic timing. Following the hemodynamic resuscitation, ESG recommends early less than 24 hours upper GI endoscopy. Very early, or what is called as emergent endoscopy, can be considered in the patients with high-risk clinical features, with hemodynamic instability, in hospital bloody emesis, nasogastric aspirate is very high, and anticoagulation interruption of contraindication, there is an interruption, you cannot stop anticoagulant, then such patients may be taken for early for endoscopic treatment. So these are the most important guidelines for timing as far as endoscopy is concerned. So if you get this patient is in 2 a.m. and you're sleeping and you get a call from casualty, is the early endoscopy necessary? What are the risks of the patients? Can non-endoscopic treatment will buy time? So these are the factors which you should think of before we take such patients for endoscopic treatment. Now, early endoscopy, which is there in a high-risk patient, is why it is to be done is to reduce the rebleeding, reduce the chances of surgery, reduce the hospital stay, and ultimately what we are working for is reduce the bleeding, so that the mortality of the patient is ultimately reduced. So this is the very important aspect of thinking process when we take the patient for GI bleeding treatment. Now these are the high risk factors: clinical age, shock, mental status, comorbid illness, ongoing bleeding, laboratory findings, presentation of bleeding melena, RBC rectal examination, blood gastric aspirate, then hematemesis. So this is Barkan et al. And these are the another group of consensus at the conference, Anand Journal of Internal Medicine, which is there in 2003. So these are the factors which are, see, the factors are more or less same. So you must have in the mind age of the patient, you must have any drugs he is taking, any comorbid illness, then mental status and blood pressure of the patient. These are the most important thing which we have to consider while we treat the patient for upper GI endoscopic treatment. Now, what is the best treatment which is likely to be there? What is the likely recurrent bleeding? How to avoid recurrent bleeding? So these are the things which you must know when you take the patient for early morning for endoscopic treatment. So detection of bleeding source, we can only treat when we see. So, or what we see or when we see properly. So for which such and such purpose, what you must know that you must have preferably, because some of the centers, they do not have a double channel endoscope, but some centers they have, that is a luxury. But we must have a good endoscope, external large suction device, so that we can suction the clots, to suction the blood which is there inside, and IV erythromycin, water pump jet, so that we can clear it off. The what you can say, the bleeding source is very easily seen, and you can press on the pump and put the jet, so that the bleeding source is seen nicely, and we can do the treatment. Now this is the external device suction, and this is double channel screw, stopcock, lavage tube, suction tube. Or you can have a suction tube to the normal source, normal scope, and you can have an external suction device also. So erythromycin they have described, but we in Indian population we don't use this majority of the times. Erythromycin in 3 milligram per kg IV, one before endoscopy, is likely to improve the gastric examination significantly better, which decreases the need of repeat endoscopy. But erythromycin is not available, majority of the times it is not available here. So this is sometimes can be used to prolong the things. So worst outcome, why we cannot have a good outcome if you do not do the endoscopy properly. Inadequate resuscitation is there, procedure without usual support, endoscopy, nurse, technicians, off hours, means if you do a procedure at around say 12 p.m. in midnight, or maybe in the night time, endoscopies may have fatigue, then there might not be performance and quality of your team, so that then the outcome of the patient may not be good. And lack of the backup support which is immediately available, interventional radiology sometimes is necessary, surgeons are necessary sometimes. So these people are usually available in daytime, and to manage these people in the night time from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. usually is very difficult in a good setup also. So this is a Forrest classification of the bleeding, where we should do a clean base, then a stigmata, then this is a adherent clot, visible vessel, and this is a spurter. So these are the things which we need to treat, and which we don't want to treat, or we leave as it is, so that they can be taken over by all PPIs. So this is the first one: F1, F2A, F2B, F2C, and F3. So these are the first three one. This needs to be treated with a double or single treatment device, and probably a double combination of treatment. But this F2C and F3 may not be treated, and then it can be live like that, and you can have high dose PPI for these patients, then dietary advice, and the patient can be 100% better for this type of lesions. Now, what are the things which are available options? Usually we have got injection treatment, thermal probe, and mechanical devices. So injection treatment is we induce or we give injection adrenaline 1 in 10,000 to all four corners of the base of the ulcer, and in that we either put a heater probe, a bipolar probe, APC, and then sometimes a mechanical hemoclip, or we may do a banding for sometimes, as I said, sometimes a Mallory-based tear, we can go for a endoscopic binding, so that it will be taken care of properly, because if the tear is say large, then band also can be used for gripping and stopping the bleed. Sometimes it may not be working, sometimes the band slips and it can be a torrential bleeding. So for that purpose, we have to use injection as well as clipping device must be ready. So there is a basket of upper GI endoscopic devices which we keep ready when we take the patient for upper GI endoscope, which includes all this injection treatment. Then we have powder form, then we have argon plasma ready, then bipolar probe ready, heater probes ready, hemoclip is ready, injection treatment is ready. So everything what we can take it at the time when we see the bleeder or what is the lesion, then we can modify your decisions when you are doing an endoscopy. Another important thing is this is a monopolar and soft coag. Soft coag is a very useful source of bleeding control, which commonly we used in POEM surgery, as we do a submucosal tunnel and we do a cutting of the subareolar tissue. We see the vessels which are very close and very standing out vessels there. So this is a very monopolar soft coag forceps. So this we pick up the vessel, pull it towards us and give the soft coag treatment, which might be around 80, and then it is an effective therapy of treatment of bleeding. Monopolar cautery with the soft coagulant versus hemoclip, the heater probe, the similar but better efficacy compared to hemoclip and heater probe. This the monopolar therapy was very safe, because this, in case of submucosal or third space endoscopy, we can't afford to keep clips or anything else, because it will occupy the most of the lesion, means the space, and it is not advisable. So it is a monopolar soft coag grasper which we see is very, very useful for a surgery. Now this is a epinephrine injection which I am showing you. This is a very much ulcer bleed which you can see there, and after the injection, then the bleed stops immediately. The injection gets the whiten the portion there. And the thermal coagulation is a heater probe which you have to put into the vessel there, and it gets coagulated by cooperative coagulation. This is a gold probe which was used in a very old fashion, but nowadays gold probe and all these things are not very commonly used, because better devices are clips and injections and very available, because this is a gold probe is nothing but a bipolar probe which has got both the bipolar thing and there. So we touch it there and the circuit is completed there itself, and the patient bleeding stops. So this is the what we have to do when we use a combination of treatment there. So this is the standard treatment technique versus endoscopic therapy. So standard technique is injection with thermal contact, either injection with clip or injection with any other device, which is a combination treatment is better than single alone. Definitely there are a lot of things which are there. Now you can see I am showing you the bleeder, which is we are injecting now. We are injecting from all around. And then we are applying the bipolar forces there, or bipolar probe there. So this treatment, so better than epinephrine alone, the combination of hemostasis is very, very important, because it will reduce rebleeding is reduced rate is very is reduced. So this is a Calvet gastroenterology in 2004 thing there. Now this is a best treated or left alone. The adherent clot must be treated and must not be left alone. So we have to we have to take out the clot. See that we will take out the clot with the Chlorasser, expose the vessel and treat the vessel according to the whatever is needed. Means either we have to burn out the vessel. So we have to burn out the vessel, expose the vessel, the exposed vessel which is there with the cold smear, and we take it out. After removing the clot, then we burn the vessel by the clip or bipolar or a heater probe, which is the convenient. So this is the exposed vessel which we are burning it out. You see the demonstration of snare with the removal of the clot here. And you can see the fulgurating also, and the vessel is being marked with the clips. And after these clips, the bleeding stops. And now this much of ulcer in the pre-pyloric area with the clot, and we remove the clot, take out the clot and fulgurate and put the clips. So this type of patient will require long-term PPI therapy so that they will not have rebleed again. So this is very, very important aspect of preventing it afterwards. So this is again a combination of therapy with adherent clot, control injection plus gold probe. So there is no rebleeding, and this is rebleed rates which we have described. Control where they have not used any other method, but the induction with the gold probe, they have controlled at least there is no rebleeding after this when the prophylaxis is given. Now, what are the clips which are applied? So there are 2-3 types of clips: Olympus, Boston, Roche, and the clips which are longer length, some clips which are useful for closing the mucosal defects, and these are also clips which are available. Now, what are the advantage of clips when you use clips? They got a mechanical hemostasis, there is no tissue destruction, and we can apply it n number of times. Means if you want to apply 3 clips, you can apply 3. If you want to apply 4, you can apply 4. So this is number of repeat application is very safe in case of clips. So the clips are very safe, but sometimes we have a longer clip, then they may block the lumen in a smaller place. Sometimes in a duodenum or somewhere. These are the improved versions of the clips, the flanks. No longer the flanks, you can have a better control of the surrounding tissue along with this. Now this is again we are showing you the clip application. This is which was a video which was not shown properly last time. Same, we are injecting and combination of therapy. Now this is the clip which purify lesion. These are submucosal vessels which we need to take care of. This is a very important because sometimes if there is not bleeding, you cannot see the vessel. This is a very, very important region which you should not miss anytime. But this can be dealt with a clipping device, and the bleeding can be torrential and patient will have a disaster. But if you noticed and if you do this treatment with the clip, then the patient is very safe. But you must know where to look for, how to look for, and what are the things which are there to look into submucosal vessel. Now these are the lesions spurting vessels which we usually apply the clips there. These are the hemoclip initial promise, hemoclips heater probe. So recurrent bleeding rates are very less as heater probe is there and the clips are there. Again, you can see the again combination of treatment therapy. that lesion, intrapyloric, we are applied clip also, so that it is 100% safe there. So what are the limitations for use the endoclips in non-varicose bleed? One is a peptic ulcer where in the posterior wall of duodenum and the fibrotic ulcer is there, then it is very difficult to apply the clip, and with very difficulty we will apply this clip. Sometimes it is very lesions which are extending on a lesser curve. Sometimes they are called as malarious tear, which is extending high on a lesser curve. Durifoil lesions sometimes, which is very difficult because you cannot see that. These are the challenges when you use the endoclip version. So clip versus thermocoagulation, again, these are the very important meta-analysis which has been showed comparison. So anyway, the bottom line is you have to have combination of treatment, and a clip has got a better advantage over the coagulation because we can apply it. But sometimes the clip can be a disaster. You may need a surgery. You see the visible vessel here. Now see what happens. The moment you apply clip, there is a distortion of a vessel which is sitting just at the base of the ulcer. And this type of patient sometimes requires surgery, because this may not stop the bleeding, so you have to explode the patient and do a surgery for this type of bleed vessels. Another most important thing is to control the bleeding. We have the radiology, intervention radiology. Can you see this? This is a celiac axis. When there is a bleeding from there, and some coils, these things are being blocked there with the coil. You can see the coil has been put there in a vessel of the stomach, so that after putting the coil, this bleeding stops. Initially, you have seen the leak. Now the bleeding stops. Most probably the common source is gastroduodenal. So gastroduodenal can be blocked with the help of intervention radiology. So arteriography and intervention radiology have got the commonest thing, which best treated interventional conditions are hemobilia, hemosuccus pancreaticus, hemorrhage into the pseudocyst, the patient whom the bleeding source is not identified endoscopically. So these are the patients which require an intervention radiology protocol, and this is a very useful tool for the blocking the vessel. Again, angiography, celiac, SMA, 80% of the upper GI bleed originates from the gastroduodenal artery and large gastric artery distribution. Left gastric and gastroduodenal. These are the two major branches where we get the bleeding source from. So embolize, you can have infusions of the drugs, then we can have embolization, then we can put a coil. So these are the positive angiography. When it is there, we can do all these needful things there. So recently we have got with the Ovisco clips. These are the very important clips where larger area of the ulcer base or larger area can be treated with this. Then some mucosal defects are to be can be treated with this. So can you see, if you see here is the forceps and the mucosal anchoring agent. So this is a left-right forceps, and this is the anchoring agent where you can have mucosa inside and hold the edges of the mucosa with the twin grasper, which is there, and then after holding it, this type of clips are there to put into the lesion where we would use it. This is a very important clips which are there. OTSC clips are very useful for rebleeding. So this is a hemostasis with OTC. Further bleeding is there, then you have to use it when there is a standard therapy is failure. The further rebleeding rate is prevented by OTC in case of recurrent peptic ulcer bleeding before you go to any other definitive surgical line of treatment. Now this is the OVISCO. Can you see this? This is a very large area which is covered in green, and you cannot see anything here. So this is along with the cap, the device is there, and you see that while seeing the device, we take the picture into the center. So this see the vessel which is bleeding there in the center. So this is a bleeding vessel in the center. Then the suction is applied and just clip it. So it is like a lady's hair clip which clips inside and takes the very bite properly so that the things are in good shape as far as bleeding is concerned. So if you see that, see the large area has been taken, and that at the base the clip is been applied there. So eagle saw, this is the eagle saw model which is there for suturing in the endoscopic devices. This is one of the models. So you can see the needle is going inside. Again, this is taken, the thread is taken inside, then this is withdrawn and the thread is now tightened. So this is the model which is there. You have to tighten the thread so that it is like a knot. So this is the type of and we just cut it, and this is the thing which is there left inside the stomach. This is a pig model actually, but actually we have to see it is going. So eagle saw is for ulcer bleeding base. You can have this OTS clip also here, but for the demonstration purpose we are doing the eagle saw demonstration model, and the stitch has been taken now. This is a pig model for bleeding ulcer. Now see what we are demonstrated now, it is being tightened there, so it is tightened. So this is now nowadays available suturing devices, endoscopic suturing devices, and you cut it with your scissor which has been there. This is another stitch. Again another stitch is taken. Just slipped off. Now it is going there. Now we can tighten it for the bleeding vessel. Now it has been tightened again. So this is the overview of overseas stitch. Hemospray in human use is a very important aspect now. TC325 delivery device, powder syringe, we have got a powder coated powder which is there in the syringe, and we got a delivery catheter which has been approved recently by FDA. The introducer handled it with CO2 canisticizer, which then we press on a bleeding surface, bleeding peptic ulcers or some bleeding with this one. So TC325 hemospray is a granular mineral based spray. It absorbs H2O. Mechanical tamponade, it takes activate the clotting cascade, and this has been useful in Canada, Hong Kong, Europe, and nowadays also is available in India also. So this is a topical hemostatic agents. So peptic ulcer malignancy, people have done trial with this TC325. Spain is the most important country to use this for very abundant use. Hemostasis, they are achieved in 93% of the cases. Rebleeding rate is 21% at the end of 3 and 27 at the end of 30. So predictor support spurting bleeding and hypotension. So predictor of lead. So rebleeding rate is a little bit on a higher side, but we have to make it very cautiously where to use it. So peptic ulcer, malignancy, intermittent hemostasis, lead bleeding, again. So TC25 is not inferior to SOC at controlling non-ulcer upper GI bleed. So these are the mechanism of adsorption of H2O along with the clotting cascade. You can see the platelet, protein, fibrin, RBCs, WBCs are getting towards each other and making the clot formation and stopping the bleed. So patients with actively bleeding ulcer, which suggest using TC35 temporizing therapy to stop the bleeding when conventional endocourse therapies are not available or fail. In patients with actively bleeding ulcer, we suggest against using this 3 to 5 because that will produce a high ready bleeding rate, but which is very useful for tumor bleeding, high surface area where the bleeding is there, so we can use in very good way. So these are the results again, the malignancy. So this is the hemo spray which we are using for the bleeding. So this is the very spirited bleeding, but we are putting the spray there. And the ulcer with the bleed, after putting the hemo spray, is completely white. With the CO2, it gets condensed. And you see the bleeding stops. Now again, we have got the argon plasma coagulation. So APC, this is a non-contact modality of the patient treatment. Then we have to just put the probe near the near the ulcer or near the bleeding area. It gets contacted and it gets fulgurite very nicely. So this is argon plasma coagulation, which is there in GAVE, gastroenteral bacterial we do this every time. So non-varicose GI bleed endotherapy conclusions, active arterial bleed combination of treatment in coagulation with clips with injection in visible vessel, then diffuse ooze, monotherapy injection or coagulation, adherent clot, removal of the clot, and then coagulation, whichever treatment is there. So these are the reducing the rebleed rate. Why you have to rebleed rate? What you have to use is, recently there is a report which are endoscopic Doppler is available. Whenever you are using the endoscopic Doppler, then we have to put a Doppler probe there. As you can see here, this is a Doppler probe which is seeing the vessel is coming, arterial flow, and this is a venous. When it is artery and this we can see it there, then we can detect it. The positive Doppler signals at the having higher rate of rebleeding. We have to treat it very cautiously. So repeat endoscopy for endoscopic treatment therapy, initial control, then 90% it get for the permanent control. If it rebleeding occurs, then endoscopic treatment, again permanent control, again rebleeding, then angiography and surgery. In meanwhile, I can put a visco treatment, visco clips whenever it has been useful for that. Now take home message. So we are with the GI bleed now. So take home message is resuscitate your patient adequately and with risk explain to the patient, take it very good resuscitation, perform endoscopy within 24 hours, use PPI drip for 72 hours and endoscopy, if the endoscopy therapy alone, and along with that, standard endoscopy therapies are cautery and hemoclips. Monopolar cautery is a promising alternative which is available. OTSC effective therapy in large vessels and for the rebleeding. Hemostatic spray is useful to treat active GI bleed. It can buy time in some patients and then you can treat it afterwards properly. Doppler probes are useful to decrease the rebleeding rate when you are seeing the Doppler there and the vessel is there, so you can predict the rebleeding rate on a higher side. Be aware of the changes in the management and new occurs GI bleed guidelines. So we regularly you have to study, and new guidelines are coming internationally. You have to read that and change it according to the situation and time to time. So this is the very important message. Now the treatment and strategies are going very nicely. So when the time will come, that upper GI bleed can be treated from remote control basis. Now you can see with the remote control, the patient developed that she is having a bleeding inside. And she takes the capsule and the capsule goes inside. Doctor is sitting there and watching a television with the football match. And the moment he takes the bleeding, now he gets the alert on the screen that is the bleeding is started. Alert from the patient ignites him that there is a bleeding somewhere. Then he takes the remote control of the capsule. Then he manipulates the capsule. After manipulation, the capsule he puts into the clips, and this is the Doryl lesion. She opens the clips and the clip is applied. The bleeding stops. Doctor is happy, patient is happy. He goes for sleep. And the match is also get finished by the time he treats the bleed. So thank you so much for your patience hearing there, and this is the GI bleed. Ajay, we can conclude your remarks.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you for that excellent presentation, and it was quite enlightening and for day-to-day practice and for all sorts of medical professionals, including physicians and surgeons and general practitioners. For everyone, there was something in it which can be tackled. And the presentation was flooded with technological advances and newer things which are coming up, which would be useful. Now there are questions which we would like to take.
Yeah, I got the questions here on my screen.
Sir.
So one by one we'll take.
Yes.
So one of the question is how to approach the patient with a well coagulant and recently been stented. This is very, very important, good question, Vijay. This you have to deal with your cardiologist, and recent guidelines, you have to stop clopidogrel, and aspirin you need not stop because aspirin is the half-life and the changes are there in the aspirin, which can be tolerated. And you have to use more and more mechanical device rather than a thermal device. So when you use this mechanical clips and all this, it is unlikely that patient will rebleed again. But you have to be very, vigilant in treating this such patient, because the chances of starting the treatment and getting the rebleed rate is on a very higher side. And the high dose of PPI and the prophylaxis of PPI is very important. Diet advice is very important. So this can be taken and dealt with. Another important is what is GI bleed and all this. We have elaborated actually that GI bleed is a bleeding which occurs from upper GI tract above the ligament of Treat is upper GI bleed, and the bleed which is below the ligament of Treat is a lower GI bleed. Another is some of the question is endoscopic control of GI bleed, patient start bleeding again, then what should be done? So this is the rebleed. The patient, if the ulcer patients rebleed again, then you have to go in again, and whether you can see where you can do something for that ulcer or a vessel which might have slipped off. You can try to clip the vessel again, but on such situation, then if it's not stopping, either you have got two options. Either you can go for angiographic control to block the gastroduodenal artery, or you can go for surgery directly. So these are the two options which are there at the time of if it starts bleeding. The most common cause which somebody has asked, most common cause of GI bleed is ulcer bleed, which is on the treatment with the cardiac patient. So any cardiologist which is treating they must support these patients with the PPI, and so that the bleeding risk is confirmed. Most important question which has come from Dr. Sheikh, I think, how to treat the GI bleed during COVID infection. It's a very, very important aspect that we are not, so now the antigen testing and everything is available. It is better to test the patient antigen testing, because the results are available in 15 to 20 minutes of time. But if it is not available, the GI bleed patient, we must take a CRP, D-dimer, X-ray chest, and if possible CT scan. And history of contact tracing is must before you take this patient for GI bleed. Any patients of GI bleed which you take, at least you will get 1 or 2 hours of time where you can have this before you take into the endoscopic treatment. Meanwhile, to know the COVID patient, it is there or not, we have got antibody testing readily available, CT scan, D-dimer, CRP levels, and as you do the blood levels, you must see, the most important thing is in a CBC neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio is a very, very important thing which commonly is missed. When the lymphocytes are less than 20 in a CBC, you must suspect COVID. And if it is more than 20, 25, 20, 30, then the things may not be COVID. It may be COVID, but the chances are less likely, but this doesn't apply when the patient is taking chemotherapy and all other immunosuppressive agents. Differential diagnosis of GI bleed, I have told you already. So when the cirrhosis of liver, one of the question is cirrhosis of liver, there is a total together is a different ball game. So when we are doing with the varices, you must see the fundal varices are there or not, GOV1, GOV2, and then we have to treat the fundal varices first and then treat the esophageal varices. This is a dictum. Only esophageal varices, that the banding is the most important thing, then prophylactic for rebleed, then dietary advice, then propranolol treatment with the beta blockers, and the higher beta block means the recent beta blockers, all this to be taken care of. Somebody has asked what is the treatment of esophageal varices with the hepatitis patient. So whenever the patient is hepatitis B or cirrhosis, or patient the bleeding, the hepatitis management is in addition to hepatitis treatment, you must see the bleeding, the banding, and along with this, if the hepatitis is having with the deranged INR levels, platelet levels, so in all we have to see, and then accordingly do the needful. If the platelets are very low, then there is a risk of bleeding, slippage of the band, and the patient will bleed torrentially and then difficult to manage, because adequate control of all blood products which are there, the levels, is very important while taking to the bleeding. So these are the questions which are there. So anything else, Ajay?
No, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was a
thank you,
wonderful.
and thank you all of you for being spare your time here, and for the Torrent team to arrange this webinar. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.